Hey everybody, it's Commander Klein. Welcome back to another Duel Tier List. This is the first tier list of Season 6 that I'm doing. There will be subsequent updates, of course, as new gods are released. But regardless of that, we have to start from the beginning for the new season from here. So what we'll probably do, so I'll just kind of go through the best gods first, because those are the easiest to sort. And then we'll just work our way down. So anyway, as has to be stated, this is my opinion of where the gods belong in Duel. You may or may not agree with that. That's totally fine. That's normal. That's expected. If you have any disagreements or if you have any agreements, go ahead and leave a comment once we're done. Anyway, I will stop rambling and get into this. So, first thing that needs to be said, Bakkasur is currently the best god in Duel. And that can be argued with. Several top GMs will tell you the same thing. But the question is, do we put him in SS? I don't know if I honestly don't feel like there is a god that is legit just SS completely broken and automatically wins. Because while Bakkasur may be the best god, he's still counterable by gods like Habwa. Chronos can fight him pretty well. Some of the better warriors might have a chance against him, but that's a really tough matchup anyway. I think Onher and Hu Yi have decent matchups against him, so kind of balances him out a little bit. He's not completely broken, but his farm game and early damage is so insane that it makes him probably the best character. And then we have the classic Habwa. Everybody knows the god with 4 ultimates is, of course, going to be near the top. Not quite as potent as Bakkasur because he doesn't have that insane farm game, but still, number 2 god can beat pretty much anything in the game if he's played well. Not a lot needs to be said. We all know why this god is here. And then, let's see here. I gotta think about this. I know Freya is not gonna be next, because she's not that level anymore. I feel like it's gotta be Onher next. Onher's just such an insane character. His passive is really powerful. And he is capable of beating any god in the game if played well. Same as Habwa. Which is why I tend to value him more than gods like Euler. Because I think there are very few gods that can counter Onher. His itemization is also really good. Runeforged Hammer fits really well with his passive physical penetration and his pillar slow and his impale stun. All those work together, gives him a lot of damage. With that being said, that means the next god is Euler in the list. One of the best early gods in the game, great early burst. He can play very aggressively on waves, which is a big advantage to have. Because you 1-3 and then stance switch jump on the archers, and then you can just fight your opponent melee stance with your axes, throw the axe, switch back to bow stance. and you go from there. Early game's ridiculous. He's got that built-in power steroid, which makes his late game just as good. So Euler takes the 4th spot. Continuing that theme, Hu Yi is going to follow him up. Doesn't have quite the early game, but his passive is a really insane thing to have late game, since he just gets bonus damage based on your missing health, which is pretty nuts to have when you're late game and you have a full build with a lot of attack speed and DPS. And as always, the classic ricochet ult combo. Very potent stuff, especially if you can hit a triple bounce. That's a deleted opponent right there. So Hu Yi rounds out the top 5, which means we gotta put Freya next. Of course, we all know Freya and the story of her rework. She's been reworked multiple times, but still is very strong. Has a lot of DPS and shred, especially against tanky targets. And her built-in lifesteal and her passive, of course, makes her an excellent god at boxing. And if you get caught fighting her and she's got demonic grip or something like that and you're a hunter, you're gonna be in a lot of trouble. Of course, Freya as always is gonna be in the top, one of the top spots, just because of how she works. Now, ordinarily, I would say Kali would be next. I have to think, is there another hunter that can do particularly well against her? I don't think. All these guys have a lot better control tools, and they can just, they can stun or push Kali away, and then they have their own escapes to also run away from her. So they have a better matchup, I think, than other hunters. So I think we can just go ahead and say Kali's next. She's not at the level she used to be. For whatever reason, she's gotten a lot easier to control. Although your game plan with her has not changed. You play her the same way she's always been played. Which, against hunters, is try not to die early, so you can get to late game and then you automatically win after 20 minutes because you're Kali. And that's always been how Kali is. It's just a matter of surviving that early game, and then it's insane DPS, run down your opponent, they're dead in 5 seconds, whatever. Easy mode. And then next we gotta put Chronos. Chronos doesn't always get picked that much, not as much as he should. I think there's situations he's better than Freya because of his basic attack steroid on his accelerate. You pop that and you just go, and he can, well, you have to talk about it, even though it's scummy, he can backdoor better than any other god in the game because of that steroid on his 2. And so that makes him very potent late as well, especially when you get to the point where you hit a combo with him and your opponent's dead. That's all he has to do late game, is hit you once with a time stop and you're basically dead. So with that, Chronos goes right there after Kali. Let's think here. Don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but Vamana's a really strong pick right now. A lot of top players have been doing some things with this character. The buffs to his ult and items like Blackthorn have made him a lot stronger of a pick, and now people are regularly using this god and discovering how completely broken his ultimate is. When the fact of the matter is, you take your opponent's Phoenix, you've won the game, because most gods can't deal with him once he ults and starts attacking their Titan. It just makes him really insane. Alright, now we get to some of the lesser hunters. We start that off with a Muzen Cobb, one of the oldest top tier dual gods in the game. He still has that completely crazy DPS and damage from his ultimate. Still got the really annoying slow. Of course, the thing that holds him back from being up at the same level as these three hunters here is, of course, his lack of mobility. He has no jump, he has no dash, he doesn't have anything. So if you're a god that can sustain and reliably keep yourself alive when you're fighting him, there's not a lot AMC can do against that. Which actually ties into what I said about Vamana earlier. That's a matchup that AMC has a lot of trouble with, because he can't get away from Vamana. So he goes there. Alright, this next... Excuse me. Excuse me. Anyway. Let's see, this next one might be out of left field, but some of the recent item buffs have put him on that level, in my opinion. And that's Chronos. A lot of people probably don't see that coming, but the combination of Blackthorn Runeforged on him is incredibly strong. And you also have to remember you can get constant application of Runeforged because of the slow on his basic attack toggle on his one. You put it in winter stance, your opponent's constantly slowed, which means you're proccing Runeforged all the time. And that's really hard to deal with. Not to mention the fact that the character has always had really high DPS. Hasn't always been used that well when he's picked, but he has the potential to be pretty insanely strong. So we'll drop Chronos right there. Let's see, we got any other S plus gods we gotta think about? When you get later into these tiers, the order of the gods is less important. Just to point out, so I may not put all these in order. I'm gonna think. I'm actually gonna put Osiris in S plus. I think I've had him in there before. I had him in here last season. And this season even more so, because Runeforged was already a good item for him to build, and now it's got 15 more power, so it's even better. There are very few gods in the game that can box Osiris. Some of these up here might be able to do it, but that's still really hard with a god that has built-in damage mitigation and an ability that just straight up decreases the damage he takes. You do that coupled with Runeforged and some auto attack items for DPS. Osiris is a monster at every stage of the game. You always need to be careful with him. He's not played a lot. You won't see him very often, but when you do, watch out. Okay, let's see who's next here. I wouldn't normally do this for a mage like this, but I'm going to throw Hera up in S+2. I mean, what are you going to do? It's a 2v1 when you fight her. It's just the worst thing ever. Argos is a stupid ability that needs to be nerfed, and it makes it so there are several gods that can't actually fight Hera at all, and that's very sad and unfortunate. There's never been a god that's so that immobile and does as well as Hera does in the game. And bottom line is Argos. That's basically why she's S+. I don't think anything else needs to be said. Okay, let's see. Okay, honestly, I think that's going to actually do it for S+. I don't think there's any other gods that are playing at that level. Anubis is close, but he's not quite there, I don't think. So anyway, we'll drop down to S and throw our boy Anubis at the top. We all know Anubis. Crazy late burst. An ultimate that does a stupid amount of damage. He can one-shot Titans with it. Plus he's got 2 other abilities in that pesky wrap. He hits that, and his 3 and his 1, he can kill you with just that. He doesn't even need to ult you. Of course, that's the strategy there, is you get your relics that way, and then you just ult them after. And that's a trap a lot of people fall into with Anubis, is they don't just use their ult when it's useful. They wait until they hit their wrap, which isn't always the best thing to do. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We'll talk about where he is in Duel, and that's top of S. Just ridiculous burst and all that. What are you going to do? And with that being said, our boy Merlin, here he is, gets to hang out in S with Anubis, same type of character, has crazy burst. It doesn't have the same amount of crowd control as Anubis is, so he's not quite as strong, but he can burst you to death the same way. For those of you that want some duel secrets, make sure if you're fighting Vamana, Merlin's a good counter pick if you have it, because he can still easily burst Vamana to death with his fire, even if Vamana's ulting. If you got anti-heal and you're in fire stance, you can basically kill Vamana while he's ulting, so makes him really strong in that regard. Just the really high burst and a somewhat convenient escape puts him at the top of S. Means there's another god we need to talk about. Like that. And here's Erlang Shin. Of course, he's a little bit of a weird pick. You don't see him very often, but he's very strong against certain gods. He's got pretty good matchups into a lot of these mages because of his ability to chase and very quickly burst you with auto attacks. There are very few gods besides Bakkasur that can do things like that. Except Erlang does them less well because he doesn't have CC immunity. He doesn't have quite the same level of auto attack burst, which keeps him down here a little bit, but he's still a completely ridiculous character, and I hate him. So, and then we gotta throw in the old Poseidon. We know where mages are right now. Poseidon's one of the best. It's always great control. He can slow you for 20 years, and you'll hate life because he's one of the best gods at camping. And so he can just wait till late game when he has demonic grip and gem of ISO and all these really annoying evil things, and you can't do anything about it. So there he is. And following him up is his friend Vulcan. No one saw that coming, am I right? Anyway, same type of deal with him, really great camper. He just waits till late game where he has so much burst that you're just like helpless. He's like discount Habwa, basically. And by that I mean he has to have all his items to do that level of damage, but he can. And then he's got his passive, so if he goes like shamans, you're not going to be able to chase him very easily. Straight up just annoying. So with that, I think we can talk about some hunters now. Hey, how about that? Let's talk about Scotty. Scotty's probably the most underpicked character right now based on her strength. Still a very strong character. Multiple forms of CC. She's got Calder. All that fun stuff. She can build into Runeforged and trans and ability items really well. Gives her a lot of burst. She has a lot of control on mages because her ult has the root on it when Calder attacks, so that's good to have. She's still pretty much as strong as she was when she was a hot pick. Not that way anymore, but you don't sleep on her. People need to start picking this character again. Can I search by class? Yes. How about that? Taking a peek at the hunters to make sure I didn't miss somebody right now. Is there a hunter that's at this level? I think probably we ought to put Medusa right here. She's a pretty popular pick. A lot of burst. Actually has a lot of burst in the early game, which, as we talked about, not a lot of hunters have that. Euler is one that does. Medusa's also got a good escape, a good ult with CC immunity that can stun targets under certain conditions. That's great to have. Free extra DPS from Viper Shot. And a cool passive that makes her extra mobile. That'll land Medusa right here in S. Which, if we're going to talk about gods like that, we ought to talk about Hachiman too. Just throwing him in here. He's kind of the same type of god as Medusa. Not quite as safe because his dash is shorter, but he does get extra damage from his one. His ult is pretty good, and it's completely CC immune. You can use it to chase targets, which is really handy. It also has a slow on the... I think it has a slow when you use it, yeah. And then he's got the burst from his two. All that fun stuff. And infinite mana, which is nice. Or basically infinite mana if you use him correctly from his passive. That's really nice to have. So that'll put him right here. And then we gotta go back to mages, because we can't forget about everyone's favorite party animal, Baron Samedi. We all hate this god. He heals too much. He's got an annoying slow and root thing. His ult is really stupid. There's just nothing anyone enjoys about fighting this character. He's really strong. That heal is so potent, and if you have Hysteria built up, he gets slow immunity because they thought, oh, let's have him heal a quarter of his health, but also he gets slow immunity because that's fine. Then his ult does burst damage plus percent health damage. Fun, great. It's Baron and S. And as usual, I gotta quickly take a look through here, make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, that means let's go back to hunters now that we've talked about Baron, right? Oops. So I would actually put Izanami next. In my opinion, she's got really good DPS too from her 1. Stealth is nice to have. And you can hit her 2 for the slow, makes it easier to confirm her ult, which does a lot of burst damage, and then you press 1 and shred your opponent to death, and they're gone. Anyway, she's got a lot of objective push too, and that can be really tough to deal with, especially in duel. So I think that's a good spot for Izanami. And then, because of the buff to Runeforged, I will give Rom the spot in S. 2. Classic high DPS hunter, especially if you get Runeforged and those astral arrows going. That's a really nasty combination to have. Plus the ult for killing a target at low health, even if they run away from you, you can still get them with that. Escape is a little awkward because there are things that can stop it, and it's got a long cooldown, kind of, and if you use it defensively, well, then you don't have the cripple because they're probably out of range for you to apply it. So that's a little bit annoying about him, but it's not a huge deal, and I think that's a good spot for him. Maybe more mages. We're going to throw Hell in S2. I've undervalued this character because I did not realize the amount of burst damage she actually had. And that, coupled with her pretty short cooldown, makes her a very frustrating god to fight. It's just non-stop damage from Hell and healing, and that's a nasty combination that nobody enjoys dealing with, but how it is. Plus she's got an ability to take your prots off, an ability to cleanse herself. It's just a lot to get around, but there are a few matchups that she doesn't do very well in that you can exploit. I think any hunter is really a good pick against her. And then gods like Poseidon that can constantly proc Gem of ISO are very annoying to deal with for her. But with that, Hell and S. Any other S gods? Honestly, if you put it to me, Chernobog I think would be an S god too because his DPS is so completely ridiculous. He has an attack speed steroid. His 1 gives him good burst and a root to secure more DPS. His 3 is a pretty good escape. It's also good for completely avoiding abilities. You just stay near a wall, press your 3 to go inside it, and you can avoid a lot of things that way. His ult's a really great chase tool because you can do things like back early on someone when they want to go to red if you've hit level 5. And then you just back and quickly ult back in, and they're caught because his ult also slows the target, gives him damage mitigation and movement speed. So that's fun to deal with. And that with his insane DPS puts him right there in S. Let's see, who would be next? Probably another mage. And I think that's going to be Hades. Again, Hades doesn't get picked a lot. It should be picked more. His healing and sustain is completely nuts. Fear is a really good CC tool, especially when you use your ult immediately after that. You can get free damage from it, and Force Relics. His ult doesn't have too long of a cooldown, so it's a really good thing to exploit. And he can do a lot of damage late. Poly works really well with him because you basically get free hits if you fear somebody with it, and that's really strong. He just has a lot of in-game burst that can catch a lot of gods off guard. So Hades and S. This is probably going to be kind of big, so bear with me. You know, I think I'd put Raijin in S2 because his burst is pretty nuts late game. He's got burst to hang with any of these other mages that we've talked about already. And there's a lot of hunters he can hang with too. Because of that, really easy for him to proc items like Gem of Isolation for control, which he already has the slow from Raiju, so that's pretty annoying when you can have 2 slows on someone like that. He's got a decent enough escape that can keep him safe in most matchups. But the main thing that puts him here is his burst late game, which is pretty insane, so he hangs out here in S. Now let me see. I might go for an obscure pick here. Actually throw Nemesis up in here. I like Nemesis because she has a strong matchup against a lot of the top mages. Anubis, Merlin, and Hera, she can fight very well. Particularly Merlin. It's really funny, but because Merlin doesn't have any easily... The only type of CC he has to stop her shield is his 1 in Arcane Stance. Or is it his 2? Whichever, the one with the pull on it. That's the only type of CC he has that can break her shield, and without any other reliable form of CC, she just eats him alive, because if he goes in fire stance, you just press 3 for your retribution shield, and hey, block all your damage and get all my health back, XD, and then she kills him. Now, there's also plenty of situations where she's very easy to control, i.e. on her Euler Hu Yi are some of her worst matchups, but I think the good matchup she has, coupled with her passive and her ability to chase late when she gets Katana, is perfect. And she goes into S. Yes, cool, I'm putting Janus in SS because he's the most broken character in the game. XD. Not actually. That's just a joke. Still has a stupid ultimate though. Okay, let's see here. We got any other S contenders? Um, I typically like to put Bellona in S, but that might be overvaluing her a little bit. But you know, that's what I think, though. Honestly, she's really good DPS character. Does really well against hunters late because of block stacks, all that. She can do a lot of burst and just tear you apart with her autos. Builds into hastened really well. Bellona's kind of just an all-around good character that, if played well, can win in a lot of matchups. And I like her because of that, so I'm going to drop her in S. Let's see here. Got any other S gods? Honestly, that's probably going to round out S. Most of the characters will probably be around these two. Alright, so let's go to S minus then. And I think Soul's a good starting point for this tier, actually. High DPS from her passive, good burst from her 2 and her ult. One of the best objective pushers in the game. She works a lot like Chronos. Not quite as safe as Chronos, because she doesn't have that confirmable stun to, well, that stun to confirm extra damage like Chronos does. For immunities down, she's pretty vulnerable. So that keeps her down here versus being up here like this. She's been in kind of a weak spot lately. Normally she'd probably be an S, but I'm not seeing that from her right now, so S minus is where we go. Now I have to really think about this. I guess we can just start throwing the other hunters in here, right? So let's throw down Apollo. Again, good DPS, good CC. He's a pretty safe character because he can drop that mez and walk away from you and then use his 3 to get even further away. If he plays safely, it makes him really annoying to deal with because of that. And then the fact he can just ult anywhere he wants to on the map, it's pretty annoying to deal with. But he seems to have a lot of trouble against fighting other hunters, and that keeps him pretty low on the board. He just doesn't seem to do as much damage as other hunters, and it holds him back a lot. Okay, let's see. Agni's probably a good character to have there next. He's got a lot of burst damage. He's got a stun to confirm more of his damage, which is always good. His 3 makes a good escape. And it also deals damage, which discourages your opponents chasing you. Agni's a pretty good, well-rounded mage. So I put him in S minus. That being said, there are matchups that he struggles against, and that holds him back a little bit. This is where this starts getting tough, figuring out who's where, because the top gods you can be reasonably sure about. The rest of the god pool gets a little iffy. So we probably drop G Belanque. in here. Buff to Runeforge was good for him. So that makes him a little bit stronger. Good burst from his bolas that he always has. Free basic attack damage is really good thing to have. That his passive got easier to stack. You don't have to get kills anymore to get it stacked, which is really convenient for him. So S minus. Brigitte Blanque. We're looking at a similar idea for Cupid with the Runeforge buff. That made him pretty strong. Makes his ult really potent. So that double hit, you hit the ult and the heart bomb, that's really nasty to deal with. Plus, since the ult cripples, you have to have beads or something to get out of it, and even that you still may not avoid the damage from the ult. So I think that's a good spot for Cupid. See, now we start to get weird. Yeah, see, this is where things start getting tough. I guess we'll put Loki in next. Everyone knows what Loki does. Do I really have to talk about him? I don't think I do. Loki's an S minus. The sole fact he can ignore you and just play objectives, and it's annoying to deal with because you may never touch him for a whole game. That being said, there are several gods that can kind of just eat him for breakfast, so S minus. Get to weird territory. Of course, my instinct is to put Chalk next. S minus. That's where I've always felt he was. I'd like to point out, it doesn't matter what I may be able to do with him. Good Chalk player. Fundamentally speaking, this is about where he is. Because all he kind of does is run at you for the most part. Of course, there are tricks to engage somebody with him and avoid damage, but not a whole lot he does. If you get enough anti-heal, I feel like that does a lot to him, and you just hold your escapes for his ultimate. Then you're going to do fine against him usually. The rest comes down to how good of a player the Chalk is, but ignoring that and looking at fundamentals, he's an S minus character. Because he's a warrior, and warriors have the problem of they have to get in your face and engage you, and there's a lot of gods that can exploit that flaw and poke them down before they're actually able to fight. Let me see, who would be a good... Right, where's Pele? Pele. Let me throw Pele in S minus. It's a good spot for her. Her passive got nerfed a little bit, but she's still got that high burst. And she can still use her 3 to chase after targets. It's a lot to deal with. Certain gods, of course, deal with it pretty well. Pretty much all the gods in S plus can fight her to an extent. A lot of these gods can fight her. So the difficulty for her is getting controlled and poked before she can ult. Like if you're able to CC her, get some damage off, that's going to be tough for her because she's not going to have the damage to be able to ult in and kill you before she dies. Things like that. Or there's just gods like Osiris that just outbox her all the time and control her so well that she never gets an opportunity to do anything. But that's an edge case. Pele S-. I think I can follow that up with Camazotz. It's an annoying character. He's got a frame perfect jump, which means as soon as he uses it, he jumps immediately, which makes it really easy to dodge a lot of abilities in the game that other gods might not actually be able to avoid. That coupled with his early game burst, he's really difficult to deal with early because he hits you with his 2 and then his 1, and then the autos come and you're dead after that. Just a lot of burst. He can avoid a lot of damage. Camazotz gets S-. Which is where a lot of assassins are probably going to go. Speaking of that, I'm feeling like Fenrir would be a good next god after that to throw in. Good early burst like Camazotz has. He's got a jump that does a lot of damage. His 2 is a built-in steroid that gives him power and lifesteal. And then his ult is, as we know, is very good. He has CC immunity, more movement speed. Can run up and grab targets and move them out of position, make things more favorable for himself. This is why he's always been kind of a closet counter to Hawa, but that's really iffy to me, honestly, that particular case, but he's still strong enough to be an S- pick. Now we gotta start throwing down some other warriors, I think. Honestly, you know, this might be a little weird one, but I'm gonna throw Arachne in here with all these other assassins. Her late burst with her autos in chase against targets is really ridiculous, and if she's able to get to late game, there's not a lot of gods that can beat her. But the thing is, getting to the late game, there's a lot of matchups where she is not able to do that. Like, a lot of mages and most of the top hunters can shut her down before she's able to get to that late stage. And so because of that, that holds her back to S- here. Okay. And now I can put Hercules. Hercules is a stupid character. His healing is still silly. His ult is completely ridiculous because they shortened the cooldown and it already had the single highest physical burst of any ability. His 1 does a lot of damage. He can grab a target and then push them further back into his tower with his 2, the old 2-1 combo. I'll know about that. And at level 20, his passive gives him 75 power. Wow. It's like having the same power as Bloodforge, just there. And because of that ridiculousness, he gets S-. Barely. His mobility's terrible, though. Who was next? I was thinking Artemis, wasn't I? Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Actually, let me not do Artemis. I don't think that works. It's tough for me to put a hunter low because fundamentally hunters are just good at the game mode. So Chiron's probably slightly better than Artemis because he's more mobile. So we'll put him in there next. If you can hit all your abilities, he's also got pretty high burst and DPS. He's got more DPS than Artemis does, which makes him slightly better. Of course, there's a lot of gods he struggles with fighting, but he's a hunter, so fundamentally we gotta give him that respect. S minus. Now it gets tough. Who have we not talked about? Starting to get weird. Here's Kukulcan. Drop this guy. Actually, wait, no, Achilles is better than him. Let's put Achilles next. Achilles, good passive, gives him 3 power. It's got the big fat damage and the stun on his 1. He's really good at chasing targets with his 3. His 2 gives him good extra power and healing. It's great. And then there's that nasty execute you got to deal with, which can be good just as a damage ability too. He can build hydras really well. He's one of the few warriors that can get away with building 1 defense item. And that's because his burst can be so ridiculous if you have hydras that he doesn't really need more defense. He just gets damage and he just kills you. So I'd put Achilles in S minus. And then I think we follow that with Amaterasu, right? Yeah. Feels right. Amaterasu isn't a well-known pick. She's one of the best gods at doing Bull Demon, though, which actually makes her pretty annoying to deal with. She can do the Bull Demon pretty fast and pretty early, and at that point she can just start to snowball over you. And she doesn't really have to fight you. She just has to take the Bull Demon all the time. That being said, because of her passive on her 1, how much damage her 2 does, and then CC immunity, and damage and stun from her ultimate, that's really tough to deal with. So Artemis finds her way into S minus. A lot of these warriors are going to be clustered together, so I'll drop Kukulcan next. Kukulcan's a bit of a weird character. Not very well understood. A lot of dual players don't use him, just because a lot of people seem to have trouble understanding how he works. But my basic philosophy on him is, you get items like Glad Shield and Blackthorn, obviously, like that, but the trick to him is you get Haste and Katana, and then and Stone Cutting, and then you just kind of win. Once he goes into his Berserk form with that Hasten, he gets bonus damage from that Berserk form. So once he has that Hastened, his autos do a completely ridiculous amount of damage, and he can just chase you down and kill you. He's got 2 ults with CC immunity, basically, and that's tough to deal with already. Built-in anti-heal on his 1. A good Kukulcan will give you an incredibly hard time, but of course he's more about itemization than, anything else in that regard, I think. So I think S minus is a good spot. Does anybody else fit in that tier? Honestly, I don't know. I'm reluctant to put Arthur that high. I don't think I want to do that. So let's move on to A+. Artemis, where'd you go? I've lost her. There she is. Wait, I wanted to put her around there anyway. So Artemis, put her at the top of A+. Got to give hunters respect. But Artemis' problem is she seems to have the lowest DPS of any hunter in the game. I give her a little bit more room than I do Jing Wei, though, because she's got a slow and a stun. So that makes her a little bit better, I think, than Jing Wei. But her auto damage is just really low to me, and it just makes her a pretty weak hunter. So, again, give Jing Wei a little bit of respect, put her at the front since she's a hunter, but she's just a really weird character. I don't know. She's hard to place. One of her main burst abilities is really difficult to confirm. She has that built-in crit chance to her too, but she actually has to hit the autos, you know. Her 3 is pretty easy to control. I think that's her main problem, is unless she walks into her little wind gust thing or gets knocked up by something else, she doesn't really have a good escape, and it's easy to work around it. Her passive is really good since she can get back to lane quickly, but she just feels like she doesn't do much. I don't know, she's just never felt very good in Duel. Some of that's hard to explain. So I think next we gotta put Thoth in. He's a good mage, good burst damage, but he's not a particularly safe character, and it's not very hard to offset his damage. Once you get a defense item, his 1 doesn't really feel that strong. And then his 3 is good with the root and the damage on it, but for a lot of targets that's not going to be enough CC to stop them. And again, he just feels like he has a mid-game damage issue. He doesn't do a lot of damage unless you get like super late game, it feels like. So that lack of damage keeps him down here. I think we can start putting in some of the more burst assassins like Daji. I think that's a good spot for her. There's a lot of matchups she does pretty well against, but she can be pretty easy to counter. A lot of warriors beat her up pretty well because they just don't take that much damage from all her bleed and things like that. It's really all you need to do to counter her is you get Warrior's Blessing early, and after that there's not a whole lot she can do if you play smart. So A+ for her. That in mind, our boy King Arthur is coming in next. A+. Now he does have a lot of abilities and a lot of bursts. He uses things like Glad Shield and Blackthorn really well, but I put him here because it's very difficult to be good at this character. He is an extremely high skill cap. A lot of people in Duel aren't going to have that. Granted, there are a few people in Duel that are complete geniuses with this character. Fundamentally, he isn't that good. Because if he goes up against a good hunter, they're just going to stand there and auto him. And Arthur's problem is he has to get very close to you to do most of his damage. And if you're good with your autos, he's screwed because he'll get poked for half his health before he's touched you. and that's really tough for him to deal with, not to mention there are certain gods like Poseidon, Osiris, Bakkasur, I guess to an extent Euler, and Freya. There's certain gods that he just can't beat, period. And some of them are lower tier characters. Like, he can't... I don't think he can beat Kukulcan Hercules because they have too much sustain. He has too much sustain. Kukulcan has a lot of DPS in Berserk form. There's a lot of warriors that can deal with him pretty well. He's an odd character, and I'm going to keep him in A+. I'm reluctant to put him higher than that. Now we start to get to some weird stuff. I think Awilix is probably a good pick after that. Good burst. Good DPS from her ultimate. This makes her late game fairly potent if you're able to get there. Again, if she's dominated in the early game, it's pretty much over for her. If she can't get an early lead, there's not a whole lot that can be done at that point. So A+, kind of the same thing with Susanoo. Although he does his DPS with AA cancels and Hydras, more so than this flat DPS, like Awilix has. Susanoo has high burst potential, not that, but he's very easy to control early, especially if you focus waves. He doesn't clear that efficiently at level 3. He's not terrible at it, but a lot of gods do beat him in that regard. There's a lot of gods he can't fight hardly early, particularly warriors. Some of the other assassins, gods like Poseidon, he has a hard time with because they're very mobile and have a lot of ways to stop his aggression. Oh, that holds him back. Same problem as Awilix, he has to get through the early game and get to late to be a serious threat. If he doesn't get an early lead, he's basically shut down. I'm rambling about these low tier characters, aren't I? Things start to get gritty now. I think I would put Bastet next. These assassins are interesting because a lot of them end up being mid-tier. Bastet's got high burst, all that good stuff. Cats provide really good control, etc. But again, she has to get an early lead or she'll be shut down after that. Even that being said, though, her late game is kind of bad against certain matchups because it gets to the point where your opponent doesn't care about your cats because they get one shot by every ability. And without the cats, you're in a bad way, is the basic idea there. So let's see here. I think I want to go with Jean-Qui next. He's in a pretty good spot right now, I think. There's a lot of higher tiered matchups he can do well in if whoever's playing him is good. So there's that. Free protections from his passive. His one has a lot of control. It's really annoying, especially if you start leveling it. It's just constant proccing of item effects. He can get Gem and Divine Ruin and have them constantly procced, basically, if he uses his one correctly. Gets built-in healing. His stun does good damage, especially when he's been carded. What? What do you mean showing nothing on the screen? Yeah, I think that's you probably, Amy. I don't know. Anyway, I put Amaterasu in S-. I hope you're okay with that. Since you're the Amaterasu expert. Okay. A+. Come on, what are we doing? What are we doing? You know, let's put Thanatos. Actually, no. I'm going to do Mercury. I think he's probably better. Yeah. I'd give the edge to Mercury here over Thanatos probably because his late game's better. Since he's auto-tech DPS based character, that's generally going to be better in a late game scenario. Even though his early game's kind of rough, if he can get through that, there's a lot he can do late game. He's still one of the best objective pushers in the game. You have to give him that respect. So I put him in A+. Actually, we'll hold off on Thanatos. I think I'll put Robin next. Robin's a really good physical burst character, good sustain. Ult gives him damage mitigation. Really handy to have against these higher tier gods. Means there's a lot he can do if he has a good early game. A+ for him. I need to speed these up because I've been here for almost an hour. Of course, I gotta figure out who goes where. I forgot about Neath. Whoops. Let me just throw her in there. Whatever. A+ for Neath, which is where I'd probably put her anyway. She does have a lot of burst, but her escape's not very good. It's really easy to read. And if you know what you're doing, she's not really a threatening character. It's just her the ability to read her and the fact that her 1 is most for damage and that's skill shot based, so that can be a little iffy. You don't know if she's going to hit it or not. A+. Neath's just never been that good of a dual character. Some people might think I'm crazy for this one, but I'd put Rat in A+ also. Kind of the same thing as Robin. If he has a good early game, he can do really well against a lot of matchups. Interestingly enough, he's a good counterpick to Hades, because if he uses his ult and stun correctly, he can, you know, kill Hades off of waves, which that's really nice, having that control of keeping him off of a wave and so he can't heal. And then you can also just hold your ult. If he ults you, you ult out. Easy. You avoid a lot of damage that way. But anyway, that's a weird edge matchup, but I thought I should mention it. A+ for Rat. Let's see, who else? Because I'm a freak, I'd actually give Ymir A+ too. Ymir's a weird character. His early burst with Hunter's Blessing is completely ridiculous. And he can surprise you and beat a lot of gods you wouldn't expect him to be able to beat, even though he's a guardian. But we all love us some Ymir, so there he is. Does anyone else really fit in A+ right now? I think I'd go Ra and A plus next, just barely getting into A plus. I've never liked his lack of mobility and the fact that a lot of his burst isn't necessarily confirmable unless you've hit your 2 to slow them. But there are situations where he can surprise you. And he does have quite a lot of burst damage. It may not be the easiest to confirm, but when you hit it, that's going to delete most targets. And his passive isn't the greatest thing, but it's nice to have, so A plus for Ra. I think that's a good time to I think about it, and Chang'e kind of, I feel like she's in there too, kind of for the same reasons as Ra. Mobility's not great, but her sustain's really good, and her ult combo with her abilities can do a lot of damage, especially late game. She's an annoying character to fight too because of her immunity, so I put her in A plus. So now we go to A. And I think with that in mind, I'm going to throw Hunbots in here. Everyone's favorite monkey. He's a pretty difficult character to do well with, since he's so much of him. What am I trying to say? So much of his kit is based on burst and being in melee range and getting in your face. That's actually a bad thing for him because there's a lot of gods that can easily exploit that and want you to get in their face, because then it just makes it that much easier to kill you. Bots does have great burst in some situations, and I think he's slightly better than Thanatos because he can go an auto attack route if he has to, much easier. But he's just not very good. Doesn't do a great amount of bursts, and most characters can exploit his need to be in melee range. They can do the same thing to Thanatos, speaking of him. While Thanatos has a really great level 3 and can actually kill a lot of opponents that early, he is a very sharp decline after the early game, and a lot of his damage from his scythe gets shut down, so does his healing by the mid game, so that by late game he's fairly non-existent unless he's got a big lead. I think this is where a lot of those weird assassins and assassin type characters are going to be. So I put Ao Kuang in here. I've never felt very good about Ao Kuang in Duel. Just feel like he doesn't have a great early game, isn't his main problem. And a lot of gods end up steamrolling him so that by late game he's not really a big factor, even though his late game damage is very high. Usually, most of the time by then, why am I getting invites in the middle of this? Anyway, usually by then he's too weak to actually use his late game well, so there he is. And so, I missed this one, I think. I'm actually gonna, I didn't think about this till earlier. I'm actually gonna put Scylla in A+. She's a little better than exact middle tier. She's a little bit above average, I think. Her burst, if you can hit all of your abilities consistently, is really good. Ult's really good burst, has CC immunity, that's good. Her escape is good because it's pretty long range. She also gets vision from it, which is nice to have. But her damage can be hard to confirm. And if you can properly read her 3, then it's very difficult for her to run away from anything. So that holds her back a little bit, so we put her in A+. Since we're on the topic of mages, let's go ahead and put Nuwa in here at A. Nuwa's a little bit strange. Oh, man, I've been doing this for I've been on this for an hour, and I think I'm just, I'm not here. Anyway, she has an okay early game. I like her early, but she does fall off late, which is weird for mage. Most of them don't feel that way. But late, it's hard for her to deal with a lot of targets because her self-peel's not that great unless she can hit her root consistently, and you can use your decoy and use your clay soldiers and hit 180 stuns with shining metal. But apart from that, her late game's not very good, and if she's not able to get ahead early, she really struggles. So I guess means I should probably put Discordia next. I'm probably sleeping on her, honestly, because she's probably better than that, really. But again, her damage can be kind of hard to confirm at some points. Her 3 isn't a really great escape tool late game, which actually it's a really easy thing for a lot of other mages to exploit because they have AoE, and you just put your AoE on the middle of her circle, and, well, that kind of negates that right away. Because of that, coupled with her sometimes difficult to confirm damage, I'd put her in A. So I think we missed another god. I didn't put Naja anywhere. He's probably an A+ character. Because good burst damage and DPS at the same time. He can go auto attack items, do a number on you. He can also go ability based and be just as strong. Sash is a really great chase tool because he can use it from long range to catch up to a target, which makes his ult easy to confirm. If they don't beads, he can use his 2 for a heal and extra DPS. Pretty good character, but again, he's a melee assassin, and they have to get early leads to do well, and if they don't, they're usually shut down. Okay, so now we can start talking about mid-tier warriors. Not A+. Scroll down, please. Okay, it's broken. There we go. So we'll drop Sun Wukong in A. It's kind of a weird spot, but there's a lot of situations he's kind of bad in. There are certain low mobility characters he does well against because of his ultimate chase, but apart from that, he's a very awkward character. He's very dependent on his itemization. The fact being, if you don't get Transcendence, you don't do any damage late game with him, and that's a really big problem he has. And a warrior with bad late game damage is going to get steamrolled. Serket we put in A because she functions kind of in the same way Humbots does. She's a little bit safer, has more escapability than that, but there's certain situations where she does far less damage. And her ult starts to get kind of useless at some point, especially against gods with sustain, because they can take it or block the damage with something like an Aegis or a Shell and then heal it back up afterward, and that's annoying to deal with. Her kill potential is just kind of tough right now. It's not very good. Okay. What do you? What's your idea, or what's your? I'm not sure what you're trying to say, Halo. Okay, I'm continuing on. Tyr's been coming on a little bit more lately, so I think I can put him in A. He's a really weird character to me. I've never really felt good about his late game. It's not very good. He has to beat you early to be able to win. If he doesn't, he's kind of a useless character, because he won't do enough damage for you to care about him. And you can kind of just ignore his, you can kind of avoid his abilities too, which that's annoying to deal with if you're already from behind. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, where did I put Rom? Oh, I put them both in S. Yeah. Yeah, I just think Poseidon's a little more counterable than people think he is. So I didn't put him that. I didn't feel like I could put him quite that high. But, you know, I can see why you would think he's an S+. Okay, let's see. Now we're getting to boring characters no one plays. And that's kind of annoying. I guess Kukulcan, yeah, we probably got it. This thing likes to not scroll down. There we go. Guess I'll put him in A too. A lot of his damage can be a little bit tough to confirm, and that's a pretty big deal. Being able to avoid most of his damage makes him a pretty useless character. His escape just gives him movement speed, which isn't the greatest thing to have, because if he gets stunned, he's incredibly vulnerable. I don't know what his base HP and protection stats are, but I don't think they're very high. So he's very easy to burst. A, I guess. When you get down to these guys, there's not a whole lot to talk about, because at that point you feel like you're trying to sell them as like viable characters when they're not the best thing. Or I mean, some of these gods are so underpicked that you run out of things to say, because it's like most people don't know anything about about picking some of these characters in Duel. Okay, I gotta give Artio respect. She's got a good burst for a Guardian. Her 2 is a really good thing to have against a lot of characters, since she can cripple and lock them down. Good sustain, but again, she's a Guardian, and late game, a lot of Guardians have a hard time. And Artio's not an exception. She doesn't have the same burst capability that Ymir does. So that'll keep her down here in A. So I think probably Aphrodite would be, where did she go? Okay. Aphrodite would be next, I think. She's good in a few matchups, good sustain, but if you can shut her sustain down, she has a pretty hard time. If you're a character that's got good chase down, she's going to have a hard time against that too. All of these guys down here we talk about, like, let's take example with Serket and Sun Wukong. They can actually do pretty well against Aphrodite because they can chase her pretty well. And she has a difficult time if a god can just keep up with her, because her only peel is she throws the 1 out to try to stun you, and she uses the 2 for the knockback, which isn't even that long of a knockback, so that's not very helpful. Her late game I don't think is that good compared to a lot of other gods, so. Now we're down to slim pickings. Oh boy, this is fun. I guess I'd give Guan A. He's just so bad feeling. He's not fun to play. His 3 is his most reliable form of damage, and you can stop him from doing that completely. His healing is not very high. If you get any anti-heal, it makes it pretty useless. His 2 does good damage and it has a slow, but it's pretty short range. And then his ult is his best ability, but you can kind of avoid that with a lot of characters. So he's not that useful. Now the fact is he can do a lot of damage and his autos hit pretty hard, and that's the only thing that saves him, is the fact that he has the ability to do a lot of damage. Doesn't mean he will, though. We get into weird shit, and I kind of don't want to. Why is there an A minus? Do I even care about this? I don't know. Okay. Let's see. I guess let's put Zeus in A minus. I don't know. He might be an A because he does have a lot of burst damage, but he's very slow and he has no escape. So a lot of gods just pop out of the jungle, gank him, dead. That's Zeus, basically. If you're right in front of him and you don't have a way to conveniently engage him, he's going to be better than you, but most of the time you can avoid a lot of his damage, or you can just, like I said, pop out of the jungle and kill him, and then whatever, you don't care thing. So these are gods like I really don't care about or like playing in Duel, basically. Here's Nike. It's Nike. Do I need to say anything else? It's Nike. I almost want to give... Okay, maybe I'm being a little harsh on Morgan. Maybe she should be higher, but I'm going to put her here. Because she's weird. Most of the time, her normal form is not good against a lot of matchups. And then her ult can be useful in some matchups, but the problem with that is a lot of the times you'd want to use it. It's hard to use her ult early because it doesn't last very long, and it's difficult to use it late because you might already be dead anyway by the time you can use it. As like a way to escape or save yourself from dying or fight your opponent before you're dead or whatever. basically have to ult early and use the other abilities, and then follow up after with her kit, which isn't the greatest thing. And one thing I found out, she's really bad against Arthur because you don't have energy. You start at 0 energy if you ult into King Arthur. So he's just automatically better than you, no matter what you do. But that's a weird edge matchup again, but figured I'd mention it because that's what happens with Morgan most of the time, is you're just in a situation that's not good for you to ult, and you end up dying anyway because you were probably lower health by the time you decided to do it. And whatever, she's just a weird character. Where is he? There you, Fafnir, I guess. Fafnir, I give a little love to and put him in A- because he does have high late burst and can play into some matchups pretty well, but again, he's a guardian with damage that is easily avoidable. That makes him pretty rough late. Jingqin's kind of the same way, although he's a little bit better at doing boxing matches because his cooldowns are a little better. His 3 gives him free protections. He's got a knock up on his 2. His 1 has decent burst, and his ult has decent burst. So I can fight a single target a little bit easier than some guardians, but a lot of his damage you can avoid, especially if you get beads. You beads the ult, run away from him. He can't do anything else. After that, so Nox would go next. Could say Isis could be here, but Nox is a little bit, I think, of a better character. I think her burst is better. And the fact that her 3, she has an escape, I think makes her a little bit better too. And I think her ult burst is better because you, of course, you don't have to wait for charge time or anything like that. I don't think, does Isis's ultimate do more damage when she charges it? Not positive on that one, but I like Nox better. So we put her, so then we put Isis right behind her. Do that. She's a little bit of a weird character. I think I like her more than some people do, but there's a lot of matchups she struggles in. Her late game's kind of not very good, and that's usually where she gets beaten. There's just not a lot she can do late. Okay. And Thor, as usual, is bottom assassin. Because the poor guy has to have an early lead or he doesn't exist. Is basically what it is. He has all that high damage, burst damage potential, but that gets countered very quickly if you get ahead of him or you build defense early. And so if you get beads, it gets really rough for him. And the other effect is a lot of gods can just fight him, and then he's like, well, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? Really, the only way he can reliably get kills is to ult combo. Apart from that, he doesn't do any, he can't fight anything really well, so A-. So I think here I would put Odin. I forgot about Odin. We gotta throw him in there. He's not as good as his son in Duel. The thing being, most gods will outbox him easily. His ult is his only good thing, and even if he ults you, doesn't mean you're dead. You can just run around in there. And there's a lot of gods that don't care if he ults because they can just get out of it. Then you're like, well, damn, I guess I don't do anything. That's an easy explanation. Kuzenbo. So yeah, I've always liked Kukulcan a little more than that. So, hello, Kukulcan. Going to A-. Incredibly, he's got pretty good burst damage. That's it. Oh, and his mez is really good. High burst damage, that's the only good thing about him. And you can avoid a lot of it with beads. You can avoid his ult. Same thing as Jin Chen. You avoid the ult, he doesn't do much. Alright, moving on. From here, there's not that many more A- characters. One of them is Janus. Actually, we'll put Janus in A. Let's be nice to him. He's still a fairly mobile mage. He's safer than Zeus is because of his portals, and his ult is a get out of jail free card, assuming you weren't killed while you're channeling it, which there's a lot of gods that could actually pull that off. Makes him bad. I mean, his mobility is situational mobility. He gets movement speed from certain things, but if his portal is down, he just kind of stands there. He can't run away from you, probably. If he doesn't have a portal, he can't run. And even if he does, there's ways around that. You can get blink, you can jump over the wall after him, blah, blah, all that. He's a very vulnerable character, and that keeps him down here in A. Okay, next, I think Kuzenbo will go down here too. His damage is harder to avoid, and it's a little bit more reliable than some of the other guardians, but he does less damage. He fights more like a warrior, which that's why he can actually do a little bit better than a lot of the other guardians in the game, but because of that, he doesn't feel as threatening necessarily because he doesn't have the huge burst like a god like Kukulcan is going to have. And that can sometimes make him easier to control because he also wants to get in your face and fight you, and that usually spells doom for a lot of characters in Duel. Okay, we gotta give Athena a little bit of respect for the things that she is able to do. Polly works really well with her. There's some matchups she's pretty good in. Her shield wall is a lot of burst damage, but her ult is useless, so there's that. But because of reach and things like that, her objective push is better than other guardians, and that keeps her up here in A-. Her damage in some situations is a little bit less, since there are ways to avoid it. But A- is still a good spot for her. I think we can round out A- with Cerberus here. His burst is good. He's got built-in slow on his 2. His 1 is a lot of burst damage, has a stun on it. His ult has the knock up and pull effect, which can be really effective. His 3 gives him a lot of healing, but his late game is a struggle because he's got to be really close to you to do most of his damage. His 2 can be interrupted, and that's the majority of his damage gone. You can beat his ult, which has a pretty long cooldown. So late game, he's not a big threat. feel like Jormungandr is similar to him. Now, I'm going to put him on here because his picture is there for me to do it with, but I have no idea where this character is going to be once he's actually in Duel. So I'll put him down here with all these other Guardians since he functions in a similar way to the rest of them. I feel like he'd be in a similar spot. My prediction is he's better than that. My prediction is he's at least A tier. But for now, I'm going to keep him down here. And that means we go to B. And starting with B, we have Apwash. Poor guy. He has the... Honestly, I'll be honest, I think he has the worst mobility in the game. I mean, he and Zeus have the same mobility, yes, but he just feels bad. Nothing about him feels good when you're running around. Because it feels like everybody just outruns you, and then you die. And then you use your ult and you're just still dead. So Apwash's main problem is you can sort of counter a lot of his damage or just avoid it completely. His ult is honestly, it's only really good if your opponent's at low health or you've got a really sick build going on with like Spear of the Magus and Shaman's Ring. Which then it's maybe a threat, but just barely. A lot of characters can kind of just not care that he ults and just still kill him because he can't run away from you. It's very difficult for him to confirm the damage from his corpse explosion in melee range. Sometimes because it takes him a full second just to set it up. So he just doesn't do much. There he is. I know I've had some pretty crazy games with him and beaten gods I probably shouldn't have beaten with him, but fundamentally he is a B tier character. Do not pick him. Unless you just hate yourself. I don't know. This means we put Terra in here. Her damage is incredibly hard to confirm. She doesn't really do a lot of damage unless you get super late game and you get a big hit from the ult with her ultimate, and you've got like Poly and ult on someone and hit them with that, you might be able to kill them. But apart from that, she doesn't do anything. Her clear is pretty good, honestly, but it's her single target capability that's very lacking. And because of that, she's a terrible character. Bacchus is a little better, so put him here. Good burst. He's actually better against single targets. His wave clear is terrible. But he's another Guardian that's like, he just doesn't really do anything. I think Kukulcan's a little better, but he's fallen off a lot lately. He's not really picked, obviously, but it's Duel who picks Guardians. What am I I'm talking about that? It's like no one picks Guardians. But anyway, that being said, he can be good in some situations, but his burst can be easy to deal with in Duel. Versus the fact being, if he doesn't kill you with everything in one shot, he's not killing you. I mean, and that's it. And then you might be able to just turn on him and kill him after that. It's also a little bit easier to control, because if he tries to chase you with his one, I mean, you know he's got his one active and he's coming for you, so you can pay attention, focus your crowd control on him. It stops him from chasing you, because if he can't get into melee range, he can't kill you. That's really the basic idea with Kukulcan. And then we get Sobek. Guardian that fights like a warrior, except his damage is terrible. So he's just there. You pick him, you put him on the duel map, he's just there. That's it. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there. He's cool because crocodiles are cool, but he doesn't do anything. And then we can actually put Sylvanas in B. He's a very strange character. The fact that there are situations where he can do a lot of burst damage to you. He can also do cheeky pulls under the tower. Let me grab you under my tower. If you can't hit that, though, you're screwed, because that is the only way you'll probably get a kill with Sylvanas. And then we put Geb in SS because he's Geb. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Old memes. Scroll down. I hate this. Thank you. So we put him in C because most of his damage is avoidable with beads. You beads his ult and he's Geb. He doesn't do anything else. He can meme sometimes and burst and kill you, but that's not until late game usually. Most characters he's just useless against. Haha. There's nothing else to say. And then we put Ares in C too because, again, he can meme and kill you, but that's usually not gonna happen. And then you're dead because you're Ares. It's like, I hit a chain. Oh wait, my chains are down. I'm dead. Bye. That's all he does. The only way he can win is if he gets a lead. If he doesn't, he exists, and that is all he does. And then Ganesh is the second worst dual god. Why would you ever pick this character? You're an idiot if you do. Same with Khepri. Why would you ever do this? He's the worst character to pick in duel. Don't do it. You will suffer. And that's the tier list, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that. Leave a comment down below about what you think. I know I don't really have to say that because plenty of you will say it anyway because, oh my god, how could you put this character here? Yes, those comments are inevitable, and we cherish every single one of them. Yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all later for more Smite. Have a good one. Enjoy Season 6 Duel.